All right, it is April 10th and 3 o'clock Austin time. So for today's practice, I am going to focus on warming up my hands. I haven't played guitar in 2 days or so. So I'm going to do some practicing just to get my hands warmed up and back online a little bit after taking a few days off from playing and practicing. And part of that practice, I'm going to play with trying to get it faster. Now, when I teach students, I always recommend beginning slow, especially when you're working something out, because you don't want to move something fast that hasn't been stabilized yet. And when helping people get faster with music, I oftentimes use the analogy of if you want a race car to drive, let's say 200 miles an hour, you don't want them rushing to put the car together. You want them taking a lot of time, putting each bolt nice and securely, or whatever you need to do to build a car. So if you want a car to drive fast, you take your time building the car itself. And that's what we're doing with technique when we're trying to speed it up. So I'm going to do a few different types of things today. And we'll see where it goes. I have two things in mind. I'm going to do the first one, which is playing around with this figure. For those of you who take private lessons with me, you know what this is. And I call them flips. So I'm going to begin the metronome at a tempo that's reasonable and then work on speeding it up as long as it's clean. All right, half hour practice starting now. So I'm at 60. It's one of my go-to settings because it's easy to go into different cycles within that 60 beats per minute. I could do fives, I could do sixes, I could just do 16th notes. So I'm going to just orient around where I want to set the tempo to begin. And I'll have it at 60 as my starting point. Okay, so I have the pattern oriented. I have the key that I'm in, which is A Lydian. And from here, I can begin to move the tempo. And if I don't move the tempo up, I can just do different metric modulation. So the next thing I'm going to do is analyze this, which I haven't done yet. I've just played it. So I want to see how many notes am I doing per click. I actually don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I am doing a 4-note per beat cycle. Da 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 da. 1 E, 1 E and a 2, 1 E and. So 4 beat per click cycle, but a 6-note phrase. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. So cool. I'm doing 16th notes. It's a 6-beat phrase. It takes 3 clicks for it to cycle back to my thumb. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 thumb. So I'm aware of these things. I can keep track. And I'm just going to do this consistently for a little bit. I'm going to bring up the tempo to 70. And what I'm looking for is up and down the neck clean. Once I do that a couple times in a row, I'll increase the tempo. And here we go. So I'm feeling pretty good about that tempo. And I'm going to bring it up 10 beats per minute. In general, I recommend roughly around 7 beats per minute, up increases or decreases, but I'm going to go up to 10. And besides cleanliness of sound, I'm also looking for how relaxed can I stay during the process. So if it begins to feel like I'm clenching, or sometimes I feel like the analogy of like chasing a runaway train, that's too fast. So I'm going to find where that is. Here we go. One way I check in is breathing. Cool, that's 80. I'm going to bring it up to 88. I'm feeling pretty good at that. I'm starting to feel a little bit approaching that edge. So I'm bringing it up to 95. And let's just see where that is. So right now I'm just calibrating to the new tempo. Feeling pretty good about that right now. One of the things I am noticing is some tension creeping up in my fourth and third finger on my right hand, even though I'm not using those. So as I'm practicing, I'm not only paying attention to that which I am moving, the parts of my body that are moving, but I'm also giving attention to the parts of my body that aren't moving. And I'm just going to say that again a little clearer. When I'm aware of, I'm going to say that one more time. When I'm practicing, I'm not only aware of the parts of my body that are moving, but I'm keeping my attention in parts of my body that aren't moving. So I have an active neutrality in the parts that aren't moving and an active activity in the parts that are moving. So when I notice I'm at a tempo that I'm not able to keep that up, perhaps it's a little bit too fast for me. That was 95. This is 105. Calibrate for a few moments. Checking the clock because we want to be aware of time when we're practicing. We want to be aware of our timing playing, and we want to be aware of the time as well. So it's been just over 10 minutes, about 11 minutes. Calibration. So I'm noticing that as the tempo increases, I need to stay extra present with my internal relaxation. It's one of the things that makes playing hard challenging is the internal clench, the stress, the tension. So as I am playing faster, as you try to play faster, it's even more important that you stay relaxed and connected inside, spacious inside as the body moves fast. Here we go. I'm going to push it a little bit further. I'm right at the edge where I'm beginning to lose a little bit of cleanliness and smoothness. But right now I'm just going to play around with tempo, moving things faster. Let's go. 115. Ooh. Okay, so I'm noticing this might be at my limit, maybe a little bit above. So here's what here's what then I do. Is it the right hand that is reaching its limit? Is it the left hand that's reaching its limit? Is it the coordination of both hands that are reaching its limit? So each limb has its certain tempo of operation. So I'm going to check in with that. Okay, so I know, maybe you can tell, it's my right hand. So what I'm going to do is, imagine you have faucets inside. It's the faucet of attention. So I'm going to bring a little bit more active awareness and attention in my right hand to be a little bit more connected in with the movements so I can find more accuracy. I'm noticing some fatigue in the right hand. Try it again. Yeah. That was the left hand. So I'm noticing I'm reaching a limit. I'm also noticing internal contraction. So I'm going to actively try to relax. And I've just passed the 15-minute mark. Man. So I'm reaching a limit. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move it up even a little faster, which is counterintuitive because at 115 I wasn't quite smooth. So I'm going to go to 122, not 123, 124, and see what happens here. Most likely it'll be even more challenging, but check out what I'm going to do after. This is an old guitarist trick. So not happening. But I'm going to go back to 115, and interesting enough, it feels a little slower because it is. Fingers are moving, but I'm not fully aligned with the click, and I realize that. Okay, so there it is. I've reached a limit. I also want to keep my practice session moving. So cool. 115, that's about a ceiling for me, even a little bit higher than I'm able to do right now. but I'll come back to it in a future practice session. The next thing that I wanted to practice today is based on this phrase here. And if you are one of my students, you'll recognize this, but I'm moving in stacked intervals. So I have a fifth, and then a second above that, and then a third above that, and then another second. So that's what I'm practicing right now. I don't know exactly how I'm going to practice it. So I'm going to just play for a moment and run through this and see what happens. By the way, if you're watching this and you're like, what did I just say that I'm doing and how do you do it? Well, this is not an instructional video. So, but you could always slow it down and see if you can pick it up. Or hang out for future videos where I will be describing these things. Also, we'll be having some public classes in the near future as well. Cool. So I'm going to set the tempo. I'm going to think of these as sextuplets. Which means slowing it down. So we're about right there. And what you'll notice if you compare this to any of the previous practice sessions that I've been doing, the previous ones were a lot of internal awareness and organization and very specific goals of I had to reach this pattern to get to this next pattern. And this practice is a little bit different than that, as you might have noticed. This is really for me just to get my hands moving, get them warmed up. And I know that this shape itself is a good workout for my hands. So this is kind of more of a workout practice, and I have less levels I'm trying to get to, and more just working on having it be nice and clean, and just repeating it a bunch of times to keep my hand moving and get it all warmed up. And then along with that, I will be playing with increasing the tempo if I feel like I'm doing it clean enough. And it looks like getting close to the end here, roughly. How many minutes? 5-ish? No, 7 or 8. So this is what I haven't figured out what's happening. And the question is, am I in Lydian still? I am. So I want to figure out how far up the neck am I going. I can definitely get to that one. I'm going to end on that one, on the C sharp. Cool. So I keep on making the same mistake here. I'm going to narrow my focus in on just this shape right now. And I'm going to break it into triplets to slow it down. Cool. So I'm noticing it's a little fast for me right now. So either I slow down the tempo or I change my metric modulation. So right now I'm doing 6 notes per click. So I could change it to 5 or 4. 4 would be like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. That feels pretty good. Oh. Nope. Nope. As I said it before, being really honest with yourself is an act of humility. And I just wanted to note, if you noticed, I got a little frustrated at that end. So it's really important, if I notice frustration rising, I take a moment to pause, let it all settle before I begin again. So I'm noticing I am losing my focus. And how am I noticing I'm losing my focus? Because I'm losing this. So this is a good indicator of if the attention begins to wander. So I'm going to bring it back here. And noticing I'm getting close to that 30-minute mark. Almost lost it. So I'm going to try those cycles of 6 per click, and let's find out what happens. Before I begin to play, I'm readjusting internally to that cycle of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Boy, it's catching that minor second right there. Let's try it again. Ooh. And that's been just over a half hour. So there it is. There's the practice. Now, before I end, I just wanted to do one thing, which is try this as 5s, as quintuplets. So a little slower than the 6s, a little faster than the 4s, but also challenging because it's a group of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oof. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So one of the things I'm looking for is when the thumb should be back on the click, which would be right here, if I'm doing it right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. glutes. Oh, I think it should be the next one, maybe. Anyway, I'm above my half hour. So I'm going to stop this practice right here. I have a sense of what I want to practice now. I want to be able to do that in fives, which is great. So one of the things about practicing is it's important to frame it as a creative process. So it's not always just doing something by rote and doing these scales over and over and over, but it's important that it's an act of creativity. So how you're going to practice is as important as what you're going to practice. And you could have both of those be an act of creativity. In this practice, for example, the what was working with moving these inversions or these flips of these fifths and then moving into this next shape that I wanted to get these stacked intervals. So cool. How am I going to do that? Well, I decided that I just wanted to keep my hands moving. So rather than necessarily have anything specifically set, I had the time set. So I knew, okay, roughly 15 minutes I'm going to work on this first thing, and roughly another 15 minutes I'm going to work on the next thing. And it's important, though, when you do practice, that you're covering more than just automatic finger movement. So I find it's important that I practice something that keeps me engaged. I'm not doing anything that I could just do automatically or mechanically, that I have to keep my attention engaged. So there's enough little bits of twists, turns, of little complications here and there that keep me from going into automatic mode. That's important because we're not only practicing the guitar when we practice, but we're really practicing our instrument. In fact, I'll say that again. When we're practicing the guitar, we're really practicing our instrument, our internal awarenesses, our attention. So it's important that we look at what we're practicing as a means to practice those things. So our physical movements are obvious. The more complicated the physical movements are, the more it takes awareness with the pattern. So keeping the thinking straight, aligned with the pattern while the hands move, and especially if we're working with odd cycles and different tempos than we're used to. So that's keeping the body engaged, the moving center, the thinking engaged, the thinking center. And then also part of our instrument is our heart, how do we feel inside? What are we feeling inside? So it's important to stay calm and relaxed and even explore the feeling of peace, a peacefulness, as something that we stay connected to while we play. And one of the ways to stay connected to peace is by feeling relaxed. And one of the ways to stay connected with feeling relaxed is not having unnecessary tension, too much tension. And one of the ways we learn how to not have too much unnecessary attention is we become more attuned to how our body is feeling and begin to sense when we are clenching muscles, and then actually have an active relaxation process. So while I was practicing that, just a couple things, today's practice, a couple things that I noticed was that my attention began to wander about halfway through. At the first half, I was feeling pretty good, and then I was beginning to lose my attention, my focus, beginning to think about other things, life stuff, some trivial stuff, some less trivial stuff. And I just noticed that every time I would go off on a wandering mind, my fingers wouldn't quite adhere to that. And I also had an observation about faster tempos, which I generally don't practice very much in these days. But I noticed how that as the speed began to get faster, especially when I was getting in the above 100 BPM realm, my acuity for listening for the alignment on the click began to drift a little bit. So I noticed that I wasn't quite giving as much attention to the click, and therefore possibly my time might have been a little off. And knowing myself after playing for 35 years, I know my tendency is to push the tempo or to rush. So most likely I might have been a little bit ahead of the beat. And that was because I was losing my attention to the time and a little bit more just on trying to get the physical movements happening at that rate. So always good to notice when you're practicing. Observations will come up, awarenesses will come up. Great. Try to see if you can store them somewhere here so you can focus on your movements, and then maybe after your session, revisit it. When I work with my clients, when I work with my groups, after we play for a while, I always open up space for what did you notice? What did you become aware of? What was happening inside? So it's so important that we take notice of what's happening inside, because music is an inside practice. It's something we externalize our inside world, but it's an inside practice. So the more that we develop that observer, that witness consciousness with mindfulness, the more we get to tune our internal world, which of course helps us play more music externally. So thank you so much. I hope this was useful, perhaps helpful. If you liked the video, please go ahead and like the video. Subscribing to this would be amazing. So if you would be so kind, that helps the algorithm learn who likes these things and shares this with more. In the near future, I will be presenting some instructional videos. So if you're digging these practices, I will be offering a bit more about maybe some specifics of how to actually practice, like a specific what practice, rather than just how to. So if you're interested in one of those, definitely subscribe to the channel so that you can get informed. And I hope you have a beautiful moment. So thank you for your attention.